Hey Pragya,
Hi, Jyotsna. Hello, you. How are you doing?
good, good. How are you?
Not too bad. You still in there. You still with us in this country, right? Oh, so happy you're here.
No, not yet. No. I will be there. I am there in December. So
Okay.
I hope you're putting it down.
Of
But I
course
will
I
call
am.
you.
Blocking all of December for you.
Yeah, so sweet. You know, I've been meaning to get you on the show for a while, but I'm really
No, let me
glad.
let me genuinely, sorry to interrupt you. Let me genuinely start by saying I am absolutely in love with what you've been doing with this. I don't think anyone's doing this, and this is such a great platform. Lives are such a great platform, and they're so underutilized. And I've always wondered why people are not using it more imaginatively, and you are, and that's so exciting and so amazing. So congratulations on that. I'm super happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. That is too sweet. But really honestly, I've been looking for just the right topic to get you, and I don't think anybody is better than you on this today, the rise of India's cancel culture. It's a bit of a unsettling time, isn't it, Pragya?
It really is. It really is. And it's unsettling not just because there are so many unknowns around us, it's also because we have to think through, where we are coming from and where we are headed to, and try to, bring those thoughts together and make sense of our times. We cannot take the old ways for granted anymore, the way we were, the facts that we accepted about our lives, culture, country anymore. So I think it's a very tricky time, but also an interesting time. Like they say,
It
when they say you may you live in interesting times, it's both a curse and a blessing.
it is, and I think we're right in the midst of it, right? But this whole culture of having to, just boycotting anything just like that. And I think boycott today is a very, very mild word, frankly, with what is going on. You don't like somebody's clothes, you abuse them, and you just don't. I mean, it's not like most of them were going to wear Fab India, were wearing Fab India or Manyavar or whatever in any case. But yes, you want to show that you are publicly, you have a voice, and that the ability to go out there with so much hatred, it's very disconcerting.
Absolutely. I'm going to start with a Heart for Queer Muslim project. I see that they're there, and I love what they do. But coming back to what we were talking about, Jyotsna, it's kind of interesting. Cancel culture is a relatively new word in our cultural lexicon, right? Phrase rather. But it is kind of not a new phenomenon, right? So my father came from a village near UP, right? And up until even when my father was a kid, um, Jaat Nikala or Gaon Nikala was a very common phenomenon, which was basically cancel culture. That
Right.
somebody within the tribe could do something that would lead to them being ostracized.
Yeah.
Um, and that would mean that they would no longer be invited to the weddings in the community. Nobody would attend the weddings of their family. Nobody would give their daughter in marriage to them. And this was a very, very common practice, right? And of course, it was a way of imposing hierarchies, imposing norms, um, and it was also a tool for shaming, right? Culturally, if we look at the role of shame in shaping our society, it's actually played a huge role. And the idea, perhaps, somewhere was that if someone fears being shamed, they will that would be a deterrent for them to act in a way that is perhaps not conducive for themselves or their family or society or community, right? And what we see online today, in fact, is a very close relative of that phenomenon, and which had gone away in the interim years as we move towards modernity. So that sense of tribalism is back in this kind of newly packaged avatar,
Yeah.
so to speak. And let's face it, there are some really good things about people being able to use relatively democratic platforms such as Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or blogs or what have you, to be able to call out behaviors that have become acceptable norms and are actually quite harmful, particularly to marginalized communities or genders or etc., etc. No bones about that. But I think there are some issues that we kind of need to think about when we debate cancel culture. And I think the number one issue is that are we debating it from outside of ideology? I mean, is it when it happens to Fab India, is it a problem just then? And when it happens to somebody who's not a liberal icon, or it happens from or it is coming from a place which would be considered liberal or upholding liberal values, then is it equally problematic? And those judgment issues, of course, get very, very tricky, right? That so yeah, that's I acknowledge that. But I will say a couple of very quick things. One is that what bothers me about it is, and I'm just going to name 2-3 things that bother me without getting into too much detail because it's kind of obvious. One is that, you know, the mob mentality of it, right? That it can very quickly start to resemble bullying. Calling out and bullying is they're on a spectrum. But cancel culture very quickly becomes bullying, right? When you have thousands and lakhs of people suddenly on your case, denouncing you for something you may have said or done, whether that was genuinely despicable or not despicable or right or wrong, it doesn't matter. So that spectrum is, it transcends into bullying very quickly. What that means is that the other person doesn't get a chance or a platform to be able to express themselves, to put their point of view forward. And I believe everybody has that right. In fact, that has been enshrined into our ideas of rule of law, right? That literally everybody, including a murderer, has, I mean, Nathuram Godse was allowed to make a speech justifying him killing the Mahatma, right? That's our system of law. Right? So that is very, very problematic. The second point that leads from there is that it is, in some cases, becoming a sort of parallel system of justice to the rule of law, right? What we say is innocent until proven guilty. What we say is that our system of criminal justice or any justice allows you to pay the price even if you are guilty in form of a valid punishment that the law of the land decides, and after that you are free. You are a free person to restart. But the longevity of things that happen during, you know, in you know, that lasts on the internet forever means that, you know, if you're cancelled forever, then how do we, you know, how do we reconcile that with how we think of justice as part of our law and order and our framework of democratic rights? So that obviously becomes problematic. Someone just said lack of due process, which I think is so essential. We have always talked about the right to fair trial, and that is enshrined in human rights. So that's obviously a big, big issue. It definitely affects free expression because I think we're all worried that we might be next, we might say something. And I think that's a big, big issue as well. But what also happens as a result of this is, and I'll give you my personal example, okay, because I don't want to talk in abstractions, okay, but I had once, a couple of years ago, Jaipur Literature Festival asked me to moderate a panel on the RSS, with the RSS. I agreed. I didn't give it much thought. When the list came out, I got calls from people I consider friends, colleagues, saying, what is wrong with you? How can you be a part of mainstreaming the RSS's views, platforming their views? My response was, the RSS runs the country. I don't think that they're waiting for me to, you know, give them legitimacy. I think they have, and I think I'm coming from a point of view of I'm writing a book on them, I'm researching a book on them, I talk to them anyway, I'll do it in front of an audience, what's the big deal? But very soon that became sort of this massive kind of shitstorm, right? Where friends, colleagues were writing editorials, I was asked to step away from the panel, there were people who dropped out of JLF, and the organizers gave me that option. They said, you know, do you Do you want to opt out? We completely understand if you do. And I went ahead and did it, not because I was convinced that I'm right, but because I was convinced that I have the right to my journey. I have the right to do things and then change my mind and make my own decisions about what's right and what's wrong in due course of time. When that answer genuinely comes to me, it's entirely possible that 5 years down the line, I will say, I made that. That was a mistake. But as long as I'm not, doing something absolutely heinous to my mind, if you take away my right to grow, to err, to debate with myself, then what is left of me, right? In that sense of word. And I think that for me was a big moment in terms of being worried about being cancelled and cancelled for a bit, being cancelled for a bit, but being like, okay, I will make a mistake, I will learn from it, that's fine. So I think that's a big thing. And final thing I'll say is that the consequences of the people, of the mob being wrong can be very dire. They can be extremely dire. They can affect commercial propositions, livelihoods, and they can have a very serious impact on people's mental health. So we have to, our actions should always be commensurate with what the possible consequences of being wrong can be. And I think those are things that the jury's out there, but those are things that definitely concern me.
So, a couple of things, Pragya, that you mentioned, but I'm also going to go back to, when I was writing my book and the whole cancel culture, it's huge amongst children as well, right? So I was like, oh God, all the teens and the millennials and these 20-year-olds forever canceling each other without even realizing what they're doing, some of them, right? What bothers me is adults canceling children, the way we're seeing what's going on right now. Society canceling a child. How do we put things in perspective here? I mean, you talk about that choice that we have a choice to make our journey, but taking away that choice because you have a majoritarian voice and not allowing somebody to breathe further. And, how do we integrate that into our society?
That is a huge question, Jyotsna, and really you are the person who should be talking about this more than me, because your book is so incredible. It's so amazing. And I think it is what you cover in your book. For those of you who are listening to this, if you haven't read Jyotsna's book, please buy it and read it, whether you have children or not. If you are concerned about what this country will be 20 years from now, I think you really need to read this book, because it gives you an insight into what the next generation might shape up to be. Very interesting comments as well. But so you should really comment on this. But one thing I'll say is that the journey aspect becomes even more compelling as a point when it comes to a child. I mean, I'm not saying that children cannot commit crimes, but we have a separate system of justice for that. And honestly, when it comes to drugs, and I won't even talk about the preposterousness of evidence in this case. Again, it's under trial. I don't have all the facts. I respect the due process. But from what we know and what we have good reason to believe, there is absolutely no evidence in this case for the reaction that it has that it has evoked from the authorities. Obviously, something else is at play, or at least that's what we outsiders are well within our right to think. But I think there's a larger point here. I think there have been some incredible debates, particularly in the US, about whether consumption of drugs should even be seen as a crime, or owning or having quantity of drugs for consumption, or buying them for consumption. Those things are criminalized. But there is a question. I'm saying, forget about whether this, I mean, the fact that against this boy Aryan Khan seems to be absolutely no evidence. But I'm saying that even if there was, let's say we could prove, let's say that drugs had been found in his bloodstream or had been found on his person, and there was reason to believe that he had purchased cocaine or weed to consume it. There is a lot of debate that needs rehabilitation, that needs therapy, that is not something that should be addressed with incarceration, because we're pushing people further down. That addiction needs to be treated like an illness. And here we are. We are not, I mean, this boy doesn't even ostensibly seem to be an addict, but we've cancelled him. I mean, it doesn't matter. I am terrified to think about what his parents must be worried about when it comes to his future. What happens to this boy's future, and how long will he live with this stigma even once he is exonerated, which he will be, no doubt, and released. Yeah. But I really want to ask you this, if you'll allow me this question, that because you've written so much about mental health, what impact do you foresee of this kind of cancel culture being deployed against, a boy just out, or a woman, girl just out of their teens, this stigmatization, this language being employed for them? What do you think?
I'm very, very worried. I'm very worried, Pragya, with the kind of impact. I keep saying the kind of scars that this boy is going to hold for a while now, maybe for a very, very long time. I mean, they're going to be huge. And again, like you said, we don't speak about any, and I'm talking about any child who needs help. We don't speak about rehabilitation. We've gone into such extremes. We don't talk about bringing them back into the fold. Either we deny, if it's somebody that we know very closely, or it's in our circle, as adults, we're going to deny this happens. And I mean, it's very easy to hit out at a superstar son. I mean, you don't know him from Adams, right? But if it happens around you, you're going to totally deny it, or you're going to not let your child get help. And that is what I mean by saying we push our children to the edge instead of understanding what they're going through. And so many of them, Pragya, they keep writing to me. They've been writing to me even during COVID, asking for help. And I keep giving this one example of this girl. She's a teen. And she asked me, and it's nothing to do with drugs, it's just mental health. And she said, I know I'm not well. I need help. I don't have the money because my parents don't agree with what I'm telling them. But I know that I'm not okay, and could you help me get some help? And I promise to pay you back when I have the money. And that last line just broke my heart, Pragya, because I'm just like, this is such a huge issue. Why are we not understanding what's going on with our children? Even if somebody makes a mistake, misadventures of youth. I mean, at 22, and I felt really, the other day I was talking to Siddhartha Malya, Pragya, and, he was right, because he said everyone is always bringing up IPL, but I was 22, and at 22, everybody's having a good time, and fair enough. And he said, I was working hard for the IPL team, which nobody sees, but I was just 22. The way I was carcerated for that journey, and that was very fair in my opinion as well. So my point again is, you want to keep pushing children back. You don't want to get them, you want to make them into what? Into hardened criminals? What do you want to take out of them? We're not showing them the love, and I can keep going on and on with this, but this is me interviewing you, but I get very upset with this. I do.
No, I hear you, and the two things the 2 points you brought up that I want to address. One is that I am so grateful every single day that when we were 22, none of this existed. That we could be 22 and we could say really dumb things and do really dumb things, and we got to make that. We got to make mistakes. We got to learn from them in a healthy, holistic way. We got to heal, and we got to make something of our lives. So thank bloody God.
Yeah, really.
But one thing that you brought up, I think, is super important about the cancel culture, is that it is taking away our ability as a society to speak in nuances, right? Like, let's look at this whole Fab India controversy. Okay, it was a bad advertisement. Okay, where they misspelled. Firstly, Jashn-e-Riwaz means nothing. Secondly, it's not Riwaz, it's Rivaj. It was bad content.
Yeah, all of that.
Okay, this is the work I do, and we wouldn't have submitted this to a client, I promise you. Okay, but here I am in a position defending this terrible ad, which actually, to my mind, insulted Urdu. I mean, because some bunch of I don't know, goons have gotten up and said that we have to boycott Fab India for putting out this ad. Their logic is fuzzy. It seems to be that, Urdu is associated with a religion, which is neither correct historically nor culturally,
Absolutely.
because Ghazni was not speaking Urdu, or Taimur, who hate very much, as we have all learned, by a baby being cancelled as soon as he was born.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah,
He was cancelled. Yeah, really.
He was cancelled. He's Taimur, poor guy. But Taimur didn't speak Urdu. So I don't know who this is being held against, and if this is against Indian Muslims, the number of Indian Muslims. I mean, do you think Muslims in Kerala understand a word of Urdu? I mean, there Kashmiri Muslims can barely speak Urdu. They cannot even pronounce certain words that exist in Indian Urdu properly, right? So who is this really against, right? I mean, culturally, historically, Urdu is not associated with Islam. Even if it was, translation is not equal to appropriation. We call Christmas Bada Din forever. We have not appropriated Christmas. We have just translated that word. And cultural appropriation is a problem. Even if it is a problem, it is a problem when a majority culture tries to appropriate a minority culture. I mean, if by their logic, Urdu is in fact the Muslim language, then it can't even be, so it's just so absurd. I don't know where to begin, right? But what ends up happening is, here one is defending bad copy that I wouldn't have let pass through my organization, because some idiots on absolute fuzzy logic have decided to descend together and bully the hell out of a company that, by the way, should be called out for a lot of other things. And I wish it had been called out on a lot of other things, but it hasn't been, and decided to go against it. So my point is, somewhere in this rant, the point I'm trying to make is that this loss of nuance is incredibly tragic for us as a society. I'm reading this fabulous book by Tripurdaman Singh, which is about to be released in 2 weeks, which is called Nehru, The Debates That Shaped India. Okay, it's Nehru debating with Shama Prasad Mukherjee, with Patel, with Iqbal, with people from every spectrum of ideology. This is something, because we also run the Indian History Collective, we have repeatedly gone back to what kind of debates shaped us, shaped the idea of India. And there were such wonderful debates, Jyotsna. They brought us here. The reason we are still not a failed state and a failed society is because those debates could happen, and they had so much nuance, and they had so much diversity and acceptance and intellectual rigor, and they were across classes and across ideologies. And today we have lost that as a society. We are unable to talk to each other, to debate with one another, to be able to say things to each other without triggering each other. And that, to my mind, is one of the worst fallouts of cancel culture.
And of course, the fact that, I mean, you don't fall back on any kind of facts or, right information. And there's a very, very naive viewership out there. Media has got a lot of responsibility on this cancel culture as well, doesn't it?
Of course. And that's why I have so much respect for people like yourself who've come from, you've not just come from big media, you've shaped big media, right? But you are taking to alternative platforms to restructure or rethink the conversations that we should be having about what's going on. And I think that, thank God for people like you, because mainstream media seems to have shrunk in terms of the space there is within that, to be able to have meaningful discussions about what's going on with us as a society and as a country and where we are headed. Almost entirely, there's absolutely nothing. I mean, even the opinion pages or opinion centric television slots are just full of polarities. inane polarities, right? So
Yeah.
where's the space to actually have, I mean, even if the volition and inclination to have these debates that I'm talking about existed, where is the space? And that's the irony, because space has expanded due to availability of internet, etc. But with
Yeah.
5 newspapers in the 1940s, people were being able to have these amazing debates with each other. But we, with all the media at our disposal, are not being able to talk to each other. Here we are.
Yes. I guess there's nothing more I can ask you after that, really. That pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, but
Not just media, but also sums it up as people. A lot of us don't have the same friends or the same connections that we had once upon a time, because some choose to believe something and some choose to believe the other thing. It's really this or that, right? So you're in a way also canceling. You're pretty much, somebody's canceling somebody at any given point because you don't believe in that
oh yes,
ideology, or
oh, you're right. This has pervaded our lives. I mean,
yeah.
people being kicked out of WhatsApp groups, family
Oh, yeah.
WhatsApp groups, school WhatsApp groups. I mean,
Horrible.
it's really, it's awful. I don't think I grew up, I mean, I always had a political sensibility, but I don't think the first question I ever asked about the person I met was, who did they vote for? I mean, it was a secret ballot for a reason, right? So
Yes.
I have no idea who my chacha ever voted for, frankly.
Yeah.
Nor did that conversation ever come up on dinner table.
Yeah.
We could be family without having to conform to each other's political or any other kind of ideology. And I find that, my God, it makes me feel like I am 100 years old, because that seems so far gone.
Me too. Me too. Me too. No, really. You're scared to speak up. I think sometimes I just say, let's not have these conversations, because I think it's better not to. What to do, But
But there is now there is no conversation that's safe from cancel culture.
no,
I
there
think we're
isn't.
ridiculously getting to a point where, I mean, Fab India has been cancelled. Can you imagine? It's
Yeah.
no longer in the realm of
Yeah.
Modi versus Rahul Gandhi. It's now just, my kurta has been cancelled. Half my wardrobe is cancelled.
I
I
was
mean,
just going
that's
to
just
say, ये
not okay.
दिवाली के कुर्ते कहाँ से आएंगे? For a majority
I
of
don't
the
know what I'm
people.
going to buy our kids this Diwali.
Yeah,
Where, I don't
that's
know. I mean, Anokhi better have something glittery, because
yeah. I'm telling you. I'll think and I'll think and tell you. I think and tell you. But yes, it was Fab India for all our children, the lehenga. But this is it. This is it. But I know you have to go further. I know you have another engagement today. You just scheduled me in between, but I'm so grateful and glad that we managed to get you on this. Finally, Pragya,
No, I
just the
think I was
first one.
it's the opposite. I think I was just so eager to speak with you. I was like, okay, I at the risk of being late, I will do this
Okay.
and I will
No,
chat
no,
with you.
we
And
have
this has been
we
great.
will chat again. We have many more chats to do. This is not even over by we by a mile. This was actually just the beginning of a conversation, to be honest. And I'm going to let you go, run away to your next one, but I will be in touch. And thank you so much for speaking
thank
with
you.
me
Thank
today,
you. See you
Patya.
soon. Bye.
See you.